Hello, my name is Pamela McNichol, and I'd like to tell you the story this evening. One night, about a couple of years ago, a friend of ours came by our house. She wanted to speak to us about a personal problem that she was having. It was a dilemma involving the decision that she'd made. She wasn't sure if she'd made the right choice. There were some strange things that happened that evening at our house, and it was strange to say the least. It was more like what was out of the Stephen King novel. But first, I'd like to give you a little bit of history of our house, the ground that it sits on. The site that the house is on is a homestead of a parcel of land that was granted to the soldiers returning home from the Spanish-American War. Now, 140 acres of that was then in rural Carroll County. And over the years, the lands was sold off in small bits, small parcels. We have one documented case where 20 acres was exchanged for 2 slaves. And this is in the original abstract and title book that we still have. So the house and the grounds, they do have a lot of history behind them. There's also still lingering stories of atrocities committed during the Civil War by both the North and the South. The original homestead, the unofficial dividing line between the North and the South, is approximately about 30 miles from our house. So you can imagine there was a lot of turmoil during that time in the States. Friends and family divided by the war, by the morality of slavery. And there's still families today that live only 10 miles apart that don't speak to each other. It's just been kind of handed down from generation to generation. And as the generations have passed, the town of Carrollton, it grew around the farm. Lots were sold, houses was built. The house now sits in the city of Carrollton itself. And the only part of the original homestead that is not built up around or built on is what is now the city park. There are 2 antebellum houses that flank ours, one to the west and one to the east. And there's an urban legend that a Confederate soldier returned home from the war, and I hate to say it, was stolen Confederate gold. And he buried that gold in the basement of the house that's just west of us. And the legend states that if the gold was ever removed from Carrollton, that Carrollton would wither and die. Now, supposedly the homeowner that owned the house in the 1980s found that gold, and he fled to a South American country. Well, whether it was the curse or whether it was Reaganomics that played the role in the downfall of the town, we'll never know. But the town has been kind of withering ever since. Now, that's a brief history of the original homestead and our house. Now, in the spring of 2000, the next door neighbor shot himself on his sun porch. And to this day, no matter what anyone does, the blood stain still will not go away. Well, we didn't know this when we bought our house in 2002, but soon after we moved in, things kind of started being misplaced. Just little small things. The lights would turn off. Things would fall out of the cabinet or off of the shelf. You'd hear footsteps when there was nobody home and he was just there alone. Now, we kind of took it as having an overactive imagination, or the house was just settling. But we soon realized we was fooling ourselves. Because in the fall of 2005, when she stopped by with this problem, and we were sitting in the living room off of the den, and we had the stereo in the den with stacks of CDs. And there was about 14 CDs that flew off of the shelf that was in the den. And there was no earthquake, there was nobody in the den, there was no cats in the house, and no reason that should have happened. There was 3 people there that we saw it. The only thing that I could say, well, it's just our ghost. In the days that followed, things seemed to kind of settle down until about a year later. My husband and I, we were sitting on the couch in the living room, and we seen 3 strange lights go through our living room. And then they disappeared. And afterwards, you noticed a distinct cologne, aftershave smell. And I recognized that smell. It was the big wheel Avon used to make. My husband, just curious, he called the officer, that had taken the report of next door. and asked them about the inventory that they had taken, if they found any cologne. And the officer told them yes, they had, and it was Avon's Big Wheel. Now, Avon hasn't made this cologne since 1996. So there's kind of some strange things there. Now you can, whether or not you believe this or not, that's up to you, but it's true. And I'd like to thank you very much for your attention this evening, and I hope you all have a good evening. Thank you.